All right, good afternoon. We have a large number of people on the line and growing, so you'll have to bear with me here. I'm going to be multitasking. My name is Peter Mackey. I'm the Director of International Trade at New South Wales Treasury, and I have responsibility for Study New South Wales. And I want to welcome you this afternoon to the Study New South Wales Industry Information webinar. This is a little bit of trial and error because we have recently moved into the Treasury portfolio building just prior to the COVID-19 outbreak, and since we've been working at home, I'm going to ask you to mute yourself if you can, if you're not on mute, if you're a presenter. So if you're not speaking, if you could mute yourself. Thank you. All right. Well, good afternoon, and again, welcome. Peter Mackey here is my name. So I'm going to get started and give you an idea of what we are going to be covering today, and hopefully you can see my screen. So moving on to the agenda, I'm just going to give a little bit of a background and welcome to you all this afternoon. I'm going to talk a little bit about the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the international education sector here, but also talk more broadly about what Study New South Wales has been doing and what we are planning to do further on from this point. I also, in a moment, I'll introduce our guest speakers. We have with us Toshi Kawaguchi from my team, who's going to talk a little bit about the partner projects which are going ahead this year, and then we're going to have two guest speakers, Beau, Leese from Practera, and we also have Susana from the City of Sydney. And then you'll notice that you've all been muted and that your video screens have been disabled. I am recording this session, so we're only able to have 250 people dial into this system, and we had well over 250, I think 280 plus registered. So we're going to be flying a little bit by the seat of our pants, but hopefully you can hear me as well as you can, and as I said, it's being recorded. We'll distribute the recording to you afterwards, but we'll get moving on to the presentation. So Peter Mackey is my name, and I mentioned we've got Toshi Kawaguchi from my team and Susana from the City of Sydney and Beau Leese from Practera, and you'll be hearing from them shortly. So I think most people on the line, having had a look at the registrations, have an idea of who Study New South Wales is, but for those who don't, we were set up in 2014 as a function within the New South Wales Government, effectively with the responsibility to support and enhance the international student experience. We're a fairly small team. We do, however, report to an advisory board that's representative of all the different subsectors across the international education industry. So we have two vice-chancellors, and we have the vocational education, private higher ed, ELICOS schools, and also private industry, and we're also represented by the Council of International Students who govern all of the work that we do. And as I said, we've moved into Treasury. Well, we've physically moved into the building when we were able to be in the building. We're all working from home now, obviously, but yeah, we moved across to the Treasury function last year sometime in name anyhow. So I thought it was useful to start just having a look at the kind of numbers that we've got here at the moment. Now, I should say that the numbers that you've got here are student visa holders, both primary and secondary visa holders. So that means people who are here studying and also their dependents. You can see that we've got all the different sectors represented there. I guess the point I wanted to make here is that whilst a large number of students didn't make it to Australia prior to the outbreak, a significant percentage of students actually did make it here. And in fact, the original cohort being international students from China, where I guess the pandemic sort of started and the impact was most immediate, very significant numbers of Chinese students ended up making it here via third countries. So that was quite an interesting and perhaps surprising development. But the point I wanted to make was really that we have a very large number of international students here who have been significantly disrupted, who are a long way from family, and so it's obviously even more important that we're able to try and support them throughout this process. So what has been the Study New South Wales response? Well, it's had to, like all of us, has had to move with the pandemic as it's developed. As I said, originally it was really about Chinese students not being able to get here, and some that were here and others that weren't. And then it very quickly morphed into a situation where borders started closing, and eventually the Australian border closed. So we've a couple of things. So firstly, I suppose we've had to look at what we had to do immediately, but we've now starting to plan for the medium and longer term. In terms of the immediate term, we are represented through myself on the Global Reputation Task Force and the Study Australia partners through our team with Austrade. So it was, I guess, useful to be at the centre of that process, because that, you might recall, the bushfires seems like a long time ago, but the Global Reputation Task Force was set up to look at responding to the impact on Australia's reputation that was affected by the bushfires, and then very quickly morphed into having the COVID-19 issue added to its terms of reference, which is now obviously the main focus of the task force. And it's obviously what we do now is going to have an impact on our reputation moving forward. So our focus has been, in the first instance, of just trying to get out trusted sources of information to students, because there's so much information out there. It's been, I think, hard for students to know where to go to get assistance. So our initial focus has been around trying to get that information out there and keeping in touch with students about what the situation was, both in terms of the impact on them, and where they should be going to seek health advice and so on, but also where they can go to get assistance. The other element of our work has been trying to assist the various stakeholder groups through our position within health, being able to within Treasury, I should say, being able to liaise with health. So we've had work that we've been doing with the purpose-built student accommodation sector, trying to connect them up with health to identify what their specific needs were, working very closely with the New South Wales Vice-Chancellor's Committee on the impact to the university sector, but all of our providers and various peak bodies. Through Austrade, we've been trying to, put all of our messaging through the hashtag In This Together digital campaign to try and ensure that we've got some collective messaging and consistent messaging going out there to students. And we originally hosted a couple of workshops back some time ago, focused on the Chinese student sector. In the medium term, really, it's been trying to understand what the needs of students are going to be over the next few months, and we've gone out and done some surveying and have a better understanding of that, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But I suppose it's more about now the coordinated policy response and advocating for the needs of students, assistance to be provided to them, ideally at a federal level, which we're still working on, but also looking at what we can do here at the state level. We have had to, pivot and shift in all of the work that we've been doing, that we do, which typically is face-to-face or involves face-to-face work, which can no longer happen now for some time to come. So we've had to be looking at how we can shift all of that, all of the delivery of that into some sort of means that's going to be manageable and appropriate for the coming months. We're going to talk about the partner projects at the moment, but we've had to work with all of the current partners and looked at shifting how they're delivering those partner projects so that, again, they're able to be delivered under the current circumstances with all the restrictions. And then in the longer term, it's really, I suppose, how this sector is going to change in terms of the numbers of students that come here, the amount of online delivery, what that means for the sort of experience that students are having, what it means for the reputation of Australia, and obviously that's something that's not an issue that we can resolve individually, and it's going to require an effort on everyone's part. Okay, so I mentioned before that we'd gone out to do some surveying. So we had did a sector consultation survey some weeks ago. So between 26 March and 3rd of April, we had over 700 responses, and pleasingly, the overwhelming majority of those were from international students, and just under 10% were from education providers and agents and other government representatives. So as you can imagine, unsurprisingly, the kinds of responses that we got were talking about the needs for financial assistance, including help with paying rent, food, living expenses and course fees, assistance with finding jobs, assistance with accessing superannuation, which is obviously now available, access to health services and support, including mental health, visa extensions, provision of basic necessities, etc. So some of these we've been working on with counterparts around the country to try and lobby where they have responsibility at the federal level. Some of these things students have access to now already, just by being by fact that they're living here in Australia, and we've been trying to give them advice about how to access those services, and some of them they don't have access to at all, which we're again trying to lobby through our own state government and also through the federal government to try and get some assistance for students with, and we're hoping we'll have some more news on that soon. One of the first things that we did was to pull together all of that information that provided students with advice on where to access support through our International Student Welfare Hub. So that went live on the 2nd of April and has had a huge amount of engagement on it, and we can see that students are absolutely going there to get information about accommodation and housing, the kinds of charities and non-government organisations that are already providing assistance to students, how to get legal assistance, obviously through our International Student Legal Service delivered by the Redfern Legal Centre, and I know Sean is in the meeting today, so he may be able to, we might have some questions for him a little bit later on. There's obviously a range of government services that students are able to access already. It's been important for them to keep in touch with their consulates and embassies, and we've been working very closely with DFAT here in our state office to make sure that students can get in touch with their embassies. There's been a number of measures taken with certain consulates and embassies organising for students to be repatriated, etc. So there's been a great demand for that kind of connection, and then of course all of the emergency food assistance and so on. That information there is on the Study New South Wales website, and you can find a link from the homepage off to that. Okay. I thought I'd just talk briefly, more broadly about given the fact that we are within New South Wales Treasury, we've been, I guess, in addition to doing our day job, all redeployed onto various task force teams, and part of that has been, the various stimulus packages that have been put together. So there's been about 8.5 billion in support measures announced to date for businesses, and also $1 billion Working for New South Wales fund to assist the small business sector in particular, and a variety of different grant measures in that immediate response phase. We're currently working on looking at what support measures we can offer in some of those areas I've just referred to earlier there for international students, and we're hoping we'll be able to give you some more information about that shortly. So that, I suppose, is largely characterised in that respond phase. Very soon we are moving, we hope, into the recover phase, which is about obviously working with the government on what the exit strategy is from this lockdown mode and what sectors and parts of the economy will reopen and what impact that'll have. And obviously we'll be there particularly trying to assert the and elevate the needs of the international education sector and in particular international students. And then the third phase of that is really about, well, rather than just going back to BAU, what is it that we can learn in terms of doing things smarter and better? And I think there's a huge amount of issues in the international education sector that can come out of that. And again, having a seat at that federal table through the National Task Force, which feeds into the Ministerial Council, is an important way to do that. So happy to have a discussion about some of those things a little bit later. So I'm now going to bring in Toshi. Toshi, are you online? Are you able to hear me? Great, yeah, okay. So Toshi Kawaguchi obviously is the Associate Director within Study New South Wales, and Toshi's going to talk a little bit about the Study New South Wales Partner Projects for 2020-21. And I'll hand over to you now, Toshi.
Thanks, Peter. So look, delighted to be with you today to talk about our grant program, the Study New South Wales Partner Projects. And really today I'd just like to do two things. First is to introduce the grants and how they operate. And secondly, offer some tips for the application process. Now, each year Study New South Wales co-funds partner project grants with industry to further Study New South Wales core functions. And it really has been one of our most successful programs. Over the last 5 years, Study New South Wales has funded 45 partner projects, which have directly supported over 8,000 international students and reached tens of thousands of others. The grant program is open to education providers and organisations that have a focus on international education. And as their name suggests, we actively encourage partnerships across the sector. We really want to see industry consortia come together to bid for and to deliver these projects. We offer funding of up to $110,000 per project, but we do ask that applicants match or preferably exceed any requested funding with cash or in-kind contributions. So if you're applying for $50,000 for a project, we would expect you and your partners to be contributing $50,000 or more in cash or in-kind contributions towards that project as well. Peter, if you could hop to the next slide. Now, over the years, we've had a really great selection of projects, and many of these are featured on our website. So if you want to check out the link at the bottom of the slide, you'll get a sense of what other projects have made it over the line over the last 5 years and might be a nice source of inspiration for you. As you can tell, employability and entrepreneurialism have been a big focus of our projects, and we've worked with tertiary providers and edtech providers around the state, including in Newcastle, Armidale, and Wollongong. Next slide, please. Other projects have also looked at safety and well-being, and we've worked with partners such as the New South Wales Police, New South Wales Health, tertiary education institutions and others on this critical component of the student experience. Next slide, please. So what we're really seeking through this grant program are projects that are strategic, innovative, benefit the international education sector, and address gaps within the sector. And we obviously welcome applications that address the impacts of COVID-19 on our international students. Now, the applications are currently open and have been since March, and we've decided to extend the application deadline until 7 June. So you still have at least 7 weeks to get your applications in. And because we go through a rigorous assessment process that involves an independent assessment committee and our International Education Advisory Board, we usually notify applicants of outcomes in August or September, and we generally have a minister announce the successful recipients around September or October. And we aim to have projects delivered by the end of the financial year or as close as possible. Now, all the critical information you need to apply is available on our website, where we have links to 2 particular documents that I would draw your attention to: the application guidelines and the application form. Now, I'm sure many of you will have already checked these out online, as you will see, we have definitely made the application process as simple as possible because we know how busy everyone is, especially at a time like this. Next slide, please. Now, I have had some experience reviewing partner projects, and I do note that decisions and recommendations are actually made by this independent assessment committee. But I'm happy to share some of the insights that I've gained over the years in looking at some of the applications. My first tip is really around considering the assessment criteria carefully, and especially the different weightings that we've ascribed to each of the criteria. So these are quite straightforward, and there are really only 3 assessment criteria that the assessment committee judges applications on. And these are A, whether or not the proposal furthers Study New South Wales 4 core projects, functions rather, whether or not they generate maximum impact and effectively manage risks, and whether the proposal provides benefits to more than one entity and, where possible, more than one education sector. Now, the most important criterion, which accounts for almost 50% of the assessed weighting, is the requirement that the project further one or more of Study New South Wales 4 core functions. Now, as a reminder, these core functions are to improve the experience of international students studying with New South Wales providers, to promote New South Wales as an education destination, to coordinate New South Wales international education policy and advocacy, and to support new technologies for offshore, online, and flexible delivery of education and training. Now, in my experience, most of the applications will fall into 2 of the 4 functions. That is, looking to enhance the experience of international students, as well as looking to promote New South Wales education, training, and research strengths. And my free tip here is that really, I see these functions as related, because if you are supporting the student experience, chances are you'll also be supporting the promotion of New South Wales as a study destination, especially if you can find a way to encourage students in your project to post on social media and also find ways to secure media coverage. And we do have a great media team here at Treasury who can also help promote your projects. You'll also note that we offer favourable consideration to particular areas of the student experience, namely around creating work-integrated learning and employment opportunities, fostering community integration, increasing the health and safety of international students, helping international students in regional study destinations, addressing the cost of living issues, and also raising community awareness of the benefits of international students. These are all especially relevant in the wake of COVID-19 and its pronounced impact on our international students. Another tip I have is really around leveraging your partners effectively, and this means building a strong consortium of partners to deliver the project. Having a strong and broad consortium actually contributes towards several of the assessment criteria. The more partners you have, the more you can demonstrate the need for a particular project. That is, multiple stakeholders are all willing to vouch that there is a gap not currently being addressed by the sector and that the sector is willing to come together to address that gap. And that's really the key reason why the partner projects were founded. It's to foster that industry-wide collaboration. The more partners you have, the more you can also demonstrate that you are securing contributions from the sector, either in cash or in kind, and that you are also spreading the risk across different partners. And this is critical when it comes to showing that you are meeting assessment criteria number 2 in terms of generating impact and effectively managing risk. Finally, a strong consortium also helps demonstrate that benefits will derive to more than just one entity and ideally to more than one sector. That is, you also tick the box for the third criterion, which is worth 25% of the assessed value. My third tip is really around ensuring that the application is clear and stands on its own 2 feet. The assessment committee reviews dozens of these applications, and it's no surprise that the best written ones always rise to the top. Short sentences, use of headings, consistent terminology, and a logical structure make it much easier for the reader to understand your project. And for me, a big part of being clear is knowing your audience. So when you draft your application, pitch it to the independent assessment committee, which reviews the application. And this committee comprises 2 industry experts who are based outside of New South Wales and have decades of experience between them. a senior bureaucrat with years of grant assessment experience, as well as a secretariat managed by Study New South Wales. And thanks to that, there's a lot of knowledge that you can assume the committee has. But the committee is still looking for applicants to clearly articulate and provide evidence of why the project is important, what it will achieve, and how and with what resources and timeframes it will achieve it. And I also want to stress that it's very important to be clear in your budget about how the money will be spent and what contributions the different partners are providing. Finally, when it comes to submitting your application, please ensure that you do complete the submission checklist at the end of the application form. You want to make sure that it meets all the eligibility criteria, so leave plenty of time. The most common mistakes that I've seen over the years are that applicants fail to demonstrate that they are providing matched funding towards the project, that they fail to provide evidence of other partners to the project. So they might say that they've got partners, but they don't provide supporting letters or emails of support. And they ask for money for things which we can't fund, namely capital costs or significant assets. So to help avoid this, we strongly recommend that you leave plenty of time to prepare the application. And many of the successful applicants actually do start building their consortia months in advance. So if you do have any doubts, please don't hesitate to reach out and contact us. So in conclusion, the partner projects are a flagship Study New South Wales partner program, which goes to the heart of what we do, improving the student experience and promoting the state as a safe, welcoming, and quality study destination for students. The success of the program really relies on close partnership with the sector, because as it's only by working together we can have an impact on the 200,000 international students in New South Wales. I strongly welcome the strong interest that you've shown in turning up today, and I really take this as a sign of the healthy appetite that we have as a sector for partnerships to support international students and to rebuild our sector. So Peter, I might hop to the next slide and we can move to the Q&A that we have with Beau Leese. Now, we're delighted that Beau has been able to join us today. Beau's quite an incredible character. He's the former head of strategy and innovation at CSIRO, and he was a higher education director at Deloitte, has been on several boards and managed programs for the universities. But most importantly, Beau is the co-founder and co-CEO of Practera, a wonderful Australian edtech scale-up which has been successful in securing partner project funding and grown into a real national and international player in the edtech space. So Beau, I just want to check, are you able to confirm you're with us on the line?
I'm with you, Toshi, and blushing from that wonderful introduction. Thank you.
Thank you. So Beau and the team at Practera have been leaders in working integrated learning, and through the partner projects have actually managed to launch a couple of fantastic WIL programs which have been helping international students and businesses across the state and now the country too. So Beau, we've brought you on the program to ask you a few questions about your experience in applying for funding via the partner projects and what it's been like working with Study New South Wales. And I should also add that it's also an opportunity for our audience to ask you a few questions. So if people online do want to ask Beau a question about his experience, feel free to click on the chat function in the bottom left of your screen, and you can type in a question which I'll be able to relay to Beau. So again, it's that little chat icon in the bottom left of your screen. But Beau, while the audience comes up with their questions, I thought maybe you could tell us a little bit about the programs that you and the team have developed through the partner projects, and maybe touch on your experience about what it's been like working through the partner projects program.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much, Toshi, and thanks for the opportunity to speak with all of you today. As Toshi said, representing Practera as a past recipient of the Study New South Wales Partner Projects funding. I'll aim to just give a brief overview into our successful applications and our experience with the Study New South Wales Partner Projects program, just with the aim of being helpful to both Study New South Wales and also applicants as to what's succeeded for us and our experience. So as Toshi said, we're an experiential learning technology and programs provider. We're a startup. We work with universities, governments and business to design and deploy work integrated learning programs under their own brands or different brands, which help students build skills for the future. These are programs like student projects, placements, work simulations, skills credentialing and mentoring. We successfully applied for Study New South Wales Partner Projects funding in 2015 and 2016 and in 2018. to effectively seed fund two experimental project programs, or they were experimental at the time, really aiming to create low-cost, scalable, work-integrated learning opportunities for international students with New South Wales employers. These projects met those Study New South Wales purpose criteria by attempting to address the clear and significant demand from international students for employability experiences and direct connections with New South Wales employers during and around their study experience. And our program designs, or the proposals, attempted to address many of the issues that we all understand holding employers back from engagement with international students by creating a low barrier, low cost and useful business way to engage with international students, and start turning perceptions around through the reality of engaging with smart, bright young people from around the world on business projects, and turning their diversity and global perspectives into the key asset of that project. So our applications were supported by a consortium of partners across the grants, including at times most New South Wales universities, TAFE, private providers, Austrade, the Export Council of Australia, Global Trade Professionals Alliance, Regional Australia and the City of Sydney, and we're completely indebted to those organisations and the hundreds of employers that have engaged with these two programs. It truly has been a collaborative effort. Global Scope, the first project that we launched through the program, it was a 3-week project program where students complete business projects working with a government, business or community organisation. I think the initial pilot was with 50 students. Then we did a regionalised version in 4 regional centres, including Wollongong, Armidale, Newcastle, for 100 students, before transitioning that program to operations fully funded by our 7 university partners over the last few years. Today, Global Scope from that foundation has been delivered to more than 2,500 students and 250 employers, including Allianz, CSIRO, EY, New South Wales Police, Premier and Cabinet, City of Sydney, and many startups, SMEs and NGOs. And those organisations were part of the initial pilot funded through the partner projects. In terms of what's important, 95% of students completed, 80% of clients and mentors felt that the students demonstrated improved employability skills, 90% of the students would recommend it to a friend, and 95% reported enhanced social connections and professional networks, which is what it's all about. The Global Trade Accelerator was sort of a step change on that thinking, a purely digital, really light touch industry project model, which matches multinational university student teams with exporters and trade professionals to complete an international market research project. GTA was seed funded in 2017. It's a very light touch and frankly quite experimental digital project from our point of view. So we successfully applied for funding for a 700 student cohort, and the outcomes from that project were very pleasing. We delivered on the student places with partners including NSW, UTS, WSU and others, with a cohort of around 50 exporters with 96% exporter satisfaction from their projects and 87% student satisfaction. Overall, just to finish up, the Study New South Wales Partner Projects and the Study New South Wales team, and I don't say this lightly, have been really important and instrumental in these projects' success, but also in our business. First of all, in establishing the credibility of these programs, helping make useful connections through the program. The application and reporting themselves, across our experience, has been pretty light and pragmatic compared to others I've been involved with. We've been fortunate enough to have won, with our partners, the New South Wales International Student Award for Business and Community Engagement for Global Scope, and we're a finalist last year for GTA. As a partner that's met its criteria, we've also been really grateful to be profiled by Study New South Wales across a number of years, which is very important for a startup in engaging with lots of large businesses, both formally and informally, formally through the New South Wales Global Connections Program, the picture you see on your screen. These nice people here are some of our employees at Practera, Phil Laufenberg, our Chief Product Officer, and Sharon Roy, one of our data science test analysts, both of them former international students. Sharon actually met us as a participant in Global Scope. Toshi, I'll leave it there, but I just wanted to give people a bit of an insight into our experience. Happy to field questions.
Thanks, Beau, and thank you very much for that feedback. We're getting a few questions coming through, which is really great. And one of them, I guess, touches a bit on the challenges, perhaps, of that you faced with dealing with this project. I think someone's asked about the duration of the Global Trade Accelerator program, which is, I think, quite a short and punchy one of only 2 weeks. And they're asking about, why why it's so short, but I'm also curious, I wonder, you've mentioned a lot about the partners that you've worked with, and I wonder whether for you building that consortia posed any challenges and how you might have overcome them, how you went about building up those partnerships.
Yeah, thanks, Toshi. Look, certainly building the consortia is the key thing. I think in comparison, the application itself is very light. I think the most important thing is to build the consortia, and it is disappointing when you've put the work into building the consortia and might not have been successful in a particular project's application as well. So I guess there is a silver lining to that cloud though, because if you're using the program's imprimatur simply to build a concept with a series of potential customers and partners, which makes sense to both of you, that's a really great way to build business relationships. And whether that gets accelerated through the Partner Projects program or not, you know, that relationship and that project that you've developed together is still really important and can be taken forward through other mechanisms, if not partner projects. So I think building the consortium is where the real work is and is the most vital and important thing. And it's really important to build something that is really useful and important for all the parties involved, and everyone sort of gets how it furthers their own missions, and the partners all get you know, why the collaboration is important, what each party is bringing to the table, because then that can form a really enduring business partnership, whether that's through the mechanism partner projects, after partner projects, because partner projects funding is only 9 months, which is also challenging to squeeze a pilot into that time. But you know, if your project is also not successful or is funded at a lower rate, you know, it gives you a good business foundation to go forward.
Brilliant. No, thank you for that. And look, I suppose maybe a nice way to wrap this up, Beau, is yeah, if you could talk to yourself and as someone who was applying for a grant a couple of years back, would you have any advice for yourself or to all these potential applicants looking at the partner projects scheme? Is there any advice that you could pass on to them as they draft their application?
If I'm going completely meta, it's fast forward to yourself doing this presentation that I've just done in 5 years or 3 years, and think about what you're going to say about the success of your project. How did it really move the needle for international education and for international students in Australia? I think the concept for GTA, an exporter program which brings international students together with exporters, which makes total sense. You've got global perspectives, you've got exporters looking at international markets, and I think Peter and I might have chatted about that at a Study in New South Wales event for about 30 seconds, and that sort of got the wheels turning. And that's become a very significant national platform now. I think 5,000 students are going to go through that this year from 15 different universities with 192 exporters already completed, and that's happened in 18 months. So thinking through what you want that student experience to be, what the metrics are, how it can be sustained and scaled post-funding is really, really important. And what the positive impact is going to be for international education in New South Wales for the students and more broadly.
Thanks, Beau. Look, I really love those points about, bringing the sector together to move the dial, because essentially that's what we're trying to do, is as a government, try to bring all our players together and move in the same direction to actually move the dial on the student experience and to promote the state as a study destination. Well, Beau, thank you very much for joining us. And I might move on now to the next slide, Peter. I know that there seems to be a few questions coming in that didn't exactly relate directly to Beau, so maybe we can deal with those in the Q&A at the end. And we might hop to Susana's presentation, who's going to talk a little bit about the City of Sydney's grant program. So, Susana, are you on the line?
Yes. Thanks.
Brilliant.
Toshi, I'll just try and plonk a few answers into the conversation as well as we go.
Excellent. All right, well, let's do that. And if there are any others, we can try and catch them at the end. All right, so now it's my great pleasure to introduce Susana Ng, who's the Senior Community Program Officer at the City of Sydney. And the City of Sydney has been a real pioneer at the local government level in supporting international education in New South Wales. The city has an international education action plan, and Susana actually heads up one of the city's flagship international education programs, the International Student Leaders and Ambassadors Program, or ISLA for short, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. So Susana, I might throw it to you now, and Peter, if you're happy to skip through a couple of slides to Susana's presentation, I'll throw it to Susana so that she can tell us more about the City of Sydney's COVID-19 relief grants, which are a great complement to the support that's available under the Study New South Wales Partner Projects. So Susana, over to you.
Thanks, Toshi. Also, thanks to Study New South Wales for the opportunity for us to share about the city's initiative to support our vulnerable community, including international students. And I guess during this unprecedented time, we understand that international students are in great need. And we, as Toshi already highlighted, the importance of partnership. The city also recognized that it's important for us to work collaboratively with another level of government, such as Study New South Wales, education, community sector, and student bodies to address these challenges together. With that, the city has allocated $72.5 million of emergency relief and grants program for our residents, community partners, business, and art and cultural sector for the much needed support. One of these support measures include $1 million for Oz Harvest to address the immediate food security issues. Before I talk about the detail of the grants, it's important to note the key dates of the grant application. They close on 27th of April, which is next Monday at 5 p.m., except the quick response grants. Please allow for additional time to deal with any technical difficulties and submit your application on time. And you will be notified after the council meeting on the 18th of May, and you can start to implement your project from the 1st of June. For most of the project, you have 1 year to implement them, and each organization can submit a maximum of 1 application per grant stream if you meet the eligibility criteria. As Toshi already mentioned about a number of really good grant application tips, most of them really apply to your application in the City of Sydney grant. You just need to really adjust to the City of Sydney's context and be aware our local government area, which include about 33 suburbs. You can find out more of those information on our website. So Peter, do you mind to go to the next slide? Thank you. So with our grant support, there are 6 grant streams. And the community services grants and quick response grant may be the most relevant to this particular audience, and which I will explain a little bit more. We are looking for projects that focus on the needs of international students as identified by the Study New South Wales survey, and which include but not limited to the following area. And next slide, please. As Toshi already mentioned, like during this time, many international students are experiencing either social isolation. So projects that help to promote their social connection, both formally and informally, are welcomed. And it's important to address their immediate food security issues, such as providing free food or setting up food pantry, and also enhance or maintain students' mental health and general health and well-being. Also, projects that help students to develop their employability skills through training, online internship, or mentorship are also a priority for us. And also help student access to information and support is really critical, and also projects that help to remove the barrier of access. And the project could be also focused on the transitioning of existing programs or event to an online delivery model, or it can be developing or scaling up some of the existing resources to address the increasing in demands. So in your budget section, funding can be used for developing online material, staffing, resources, training, marketing, promotion, or purchasing the equipment. But it's important to note that for the bigger purchase, it's important to include your quotation as well. So next slide, please. So I'm going to talk about one of the biggest funding stream, which is the community services grants. The total funding pool for this grant is 1.5 million. Funding per project is from $5,000 to $50,000. And not-for-profit organization or social enterprise are eligible to apply. If you're not familiar with your organization's entity, you can look at the grants application guideline. There are some further definition as well. So as mentioned before, a project can commence from 1st of June and should be completed within 12 months. However, it's more desirable if you have the capacity to complete the project within 3 to 6 months, as it is an emergency relief grant. And then applicants are preferable located within City of Sydney local government area. However, if your organization is outside our area, it's really important for you to articulate how your service that can benefit the City of Sydney's residents, students, and community. And also, like mentioned by Toshi before, it's really important for you to demonstrate your significant partnerships and engagement with the local network and a whole range of different stakeholders to deliver the outcome. Next slide, please. So the next one is a quick response grants. The total funding pool for this one is about $500,000. Funding per project is from $2,000 to $5,000. So a whole range of people are eligible to apply for this funding stream, including individual, sole trader, unincorporated community group, for-profit or not-for-profit organization. So this grant stream and application open actually whole year round until the budget is exhausted. And I think it's really important for this funding stream and to focus on projects that are addressing the urgent need of the international students. And applicant will be notified within 2 weeks following 18th of May, the council meeting. So I'm happy to answer more questions at the end of the presentation, but I'm also happy to for you to contact me directly as well. So we really look forward to receiving your application. Yeah, so thanks again.
Susana, Peter here, there's a question from Judy for the City of Sydney community grants. Do we have to provide child protection policy? What happens if we don't work with children? We normally work with international students.
Yeah, if you're not working with students, so it doesn't apply to you. Yeah, I guess it's compliance with the general government working with child protection legislation. Did I answer that question?
Judy, let us know if not, if you need further clarification on that. Toshi, did you? There was another question earlier on, I think, for Beau regarding the nationality of students participating in that Global Trade Accelerator program. Beau, was there any particular nationality groups that dominated on those programs, or was it fairly?
It was across the board. I think it probably mirrors the New South Wales population in that there were a pretty high proportion of Chinese international students, including quite a number over the last 3 months that have had to complete the program in China. So they're actually working in various cities in China while they are impacted by COVID-19 travel restrictions, or indeed were socially isolating in New South Wales. But the population pretty much mirrors the population in the university partners that are providing the students, because they provide students into the program that they think can most effectively benefit from it.
Great, thanks. Susana, there's a question from Sally Purcell. Could we apply for a City of Sydney grant if the organisation is not located in the Sydney LGA, but students live in the local area?
Yeah, absolutely. But it's really important for those applicants that is outside our government area to particular focus on like how you market and promote your project, and how do you build a partnership with local organization, and demonstrate that you have like existing network with the local communities as well.
Okay, thank you. And Judy's just clarified on the website that mentions that one of the mandatory documentations as being part of supporting documents, the working with children issue.
Yeah, I got to particular look at that, whether it is applicable to the projects that doesn't involve working with children. My understanding is you don't need to.
Okay, okay, so it depends on the subject matter of the project.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Beau, there's a question from Catherine Ennis. Hi, Beau. With the micro project, how many industry partners were involved in hosting students, and were there any PhD candidates or masters of research students involved?
With the micro projects, there are about 250 to date, I think, and a number of those are repeats. So, say DPC or Allianz have done many, or the City of Sydney has done many projects. But there's about 250 different organisations. And were there Masters of Research or PhDs? Yes, there were, but not that many. We welcome more.
Okay. Now, Zorana has asked a question about advice for students for the second part of the year. So new international students would want to know if it's feasible to study remotely, considering the quality of educational connection with academics peers could be a challenge. So do you advise them to start studies online ASAP or wait for face-to-face learning when borders open? Look, Zorana, I think that's not something I'm able to provide any advice, and I think the only thing that I could recommend that you do there is that you speak to your provider, to your educational institution, university, to take their advice. I think we're in a situation at the moment where no one really knows the answers to the timeline at this point, so I'd be very loath to be giving anyone any advice on that. I'm sorry, I realise that's probably not a very clear answer. Question from Saida. Susana, did you say the application's open on the 27th on Monday?
No, it's actually open on close on the 27th of April. It's been open since the early of April.
Okay, so they close on the 27th, so
Monday.
Another week. Yep. Okay, or less than a week. Yep. So you better hurry and get your applications in. And yes, looks like we've answered your question, Yen, in terms of nationalities. And you've already answered that, I can see. How can the applications be accessed from the website, I'm guessing, Susana?
Yeah, and also it will be included in this PowerPoint presentation as well, the link to it. Yeah.
Yep, okay. So we had a few questions about, I think some people are on various devices. We will, just to confirm for those, and I've been clicking admit throughout the session, so we've had about sort of 130, 140 people online. We will be distributing a copy of the presentation. We'll also distribute I think we'll be able to put in a link to the recording if you had any issues hearing this. There's been a range of questions. Again, for those people, I don't know how many people can see the question threads coming through. There's been a series of questions that relate to issues to do with home affairs, including the issue of post-study work rights and the recognition of those, given the change in study arrangements for people. There's also been questions about visa extensions. These are all things that we are actively in discussions with Home Affairs about through those various national bodies, and there's a strong awareness of the need to clarify those. So I haven't got anything specific, but any specific advice that we've got, we will certainly provide that to you. There's also been some questions about student welfare packages. So a number of state governments have announced various measures. We've tried to focus on, in the first instance, whilst we're trying to lobby for specific student welfare measures here in New South Wales, we've just been trying to focus on, in the interim, what package, what elements of the various packages and health support measures are available to international students, and obviously all of those that relate to health are the most critical ones, and we've been putting that advice up through our International Student Welfare Hub, and certainly, in terms of the health support and health assistance, that's all provided at no cost to students. So if you want information on that, please do go to that International Student Welfare Hub. We currently have a student welfare package under consideration, so I can't give you any advice on that at the moment. I'm hoping I'll know more about that towards the end of this week and early next week. So we'll just obviously keep you abreast of that as quickly as we can. But looking, the core elements of that are really looking at what sort of support can be provided in the crisis accommodation space, additional legal assistance in the emergency kind of relief area, and also in terms of mental health support. So we'll keep you posted on that as soon as we know more. Now we're rapidly running out of time. I've got a couple more questions. One from Sue. Is there an opportunity for a similar webinar to highlight retraining programs that could help keep the vet domestic education sector afloat by replacing dwindling numbers of foreign students with domestic students seeking to acquire new skills? Yep. Thank you, Sue. Good. That's a good suggestion, and we're working closely with our colleagues in Department of Education who look after the skills portfolio, because obviously a big part of the recovery is going to be retraining people. So I think that's in that section of recovery, and we'll certainly let you know more as soon as we do. Got a couple of minutes left now. I'll just quickly scroll up to see that I haven't missed any questions, but if I have, please do jump on and let me know. Toshi or Beau or Susana, any other sort of final comments you want to make before we finish up?
Nothing from me, Peter. It's Toshi here, but obviously if anyone has any questions following this webinar, please don't hesitate to contact us via our email at study.nsw@treasury.nsw.gov.au, and also to hop onto our website at www.study.sydney and to sign up for our newsletter and to our other means of communication to ensure that everyone stays up to date with the latest announcements from Study New South Wales around support for international students.
Okay, and Katie has reminded me that I have one more slide. Thank you. The year ahead for Study New South Wales. So before we wrap up, just a couple of slides to finish up. So we have our next International Education Advisory Board, our board that advises our work, meets in a couple of weeks, and obviously that's going to be a pretty critical meeting in terms of the kinds of pivoting that we're going to need to do in order to support students over the next few months, but also in terms of what lies ahead beyond that for our role, with the sector changing so considerably. Clearly our focus is going to be trying to support students through the impact of the COVID-19, and I'll keep you posted with that. All of the sorts of standard things like our student awards, etc., are going to be we're going to have to rethink how we do those, or when they happen, how they happen, and so on. So we're just going through all of that process at the moment. I talked about the New South Wales International Student Legal Service. Sean, I know you are on the line. I will see if I can find you and unmute you in case there is anything you wanted to say whilst I'm doing that. I can't see you there immediately, Sean, but if you want to type in any comments or questions that you had, as well as all of the other advocacy and policy work, and there's been references to a range of those, including the various visa policy issues and so on, which we'll certainly be looking at. And if you are sharing information or posting information about support, support initiatives that you're providing to students, we encourage you to share it through the hashtag In This Together messaging, because that's something that helps us, again, to aggregate all of that the work that's happening around not only New South Wales but around the country to show the support for international students being provided, because there is a lot of things happening out there, even at the provider level. If you want to get more information about some of the things that I've talked about earlier in today, there are some, and I've just got a text from Sean saying he's not online, nothing to add other than we're there for any students, and we'll follow up with you to give information about how to access the legal service as part of this as well. So there's some links there in terms of some of the support measures that are available and how you can access more information. And just please do stay connected with us through our various mechanisms. And so look, before we finish up, I just wanted to thank Susana and Beau in particular for being available to give us their advice. And again, we'll follow up with an email to everyone with the various links in the presentation. So I'll just do a final check of the board to make sure we don't have any final questions. And it looks like that we don't. So I'm going to say thank you. Joy, I covered that off. Yes, there is a support package under consideration at the moment. I'm hoping to be able to advise about that over the next week or so. So we will wrap it up there. Thank you very much, everyone, and we'll be in touch. Thank you.